Welcome to Evolution Business Development. I'm Isis Latham, your host, and I'm really pleased and having the opportunity to introduce Steve Dubin to you. Steve Dubin is with PR Works, and he is the president of PR Works. His newspaper career started by covering the Boston Celtics for the New Bedford Standard Times. Steve and Larry Bird shared rookie years. Well, with a topic like that, right? Who wouldn't have something great to tell stories about? He then progressed to editing and marketing positions in several publishing companies, including the Mariner newspapers. Did I
Right.
say that right? Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions now, Steve. We want to hear about how you got your start in PR. Was it a childhood dream or something that happened later on?
Uh, it's a good question. So I don't know if anyone wakes up or is born hoping to be in PR. What I did learn is that being in the newspaper industry, both as a writer and as an executive, was that early on I predicted that the newspaper was a pretty limited singular channel to try to get messaging out. And I left the industry before it collapsed. And I also realized that I did not want to dedicate my life to abject poverty, which is kind of what the newspaper business is. And so I took my tools of knowing what it was like to be on one side of the desk talking to PR people, and tried to improve upon that dialogue by creating better ways of our clients sharing stories that are of value to both sides of the equation. And so eventually I left the newspaper business in my early 30s, and started a PR firm helping clients surround their best possible audiences with positive messages on a regular basis. And at this point, it's not just me against the world. I have two other full-time account managers who help me. As I say, they do most of the work. I try to keep most of the income and take all the glory.
Still a newspaper man at heart, right?
Sure.
So, why is PR relevant to the rest of us? Maybe we're in a different industry and we're thinking, you know, nobody's knocking on my door asking to write newspaper articles or interview me on television. So, why is it relevant?
So as I was talking before we started recording, we get so many messages throughout the day that we're pretty good at putting up or dropping the wall down and not listening to commercial messages and even some of the news. So to be able to get in front of the press in an expert position allows you to have the gravitas of being the expert and the go-to source, and the editorially approved source, so that people come to you as opposed to you having to pursue them.
Hmm.
And so let me just give you an example of how that might work in the real world. So one of our clients is Boot Camp for New Dads out of Irvine, California.
I was hoping we were going to hear more about that.
So there's 500 locations throughout the world, mostly in hospitals, sometimes community centers, teaching first-time dads how to survive and thrive in being a dad by bringing in both a recent dad with their stunt baby, so that people will have a hands-on experience with that baby and having a conversation and some direction as to what it's like to bring that new person into your house, how to sleep at night so that you feel that everyone's safe and comfortable and moving in the right direction. So from a PR standpoint, great story. You've got big guys, cute babies. What we realized our real bonanza was Father's Day. It's a natural tie into that subject matter. And we put out media packets about the visuals involved and the interviews available. And every Father's Day, we would end up on CNN, Good Morning America, major news outlets, as well as regional news outlets where we had locations as well. And it's a really good example of creating the authority position by getting free press and demonstrating the value of some of that content.
So I'm hearing a couple of interesting things here: creating authority, free press, the value that's brought in that content. How does an average person go about creating this media packet that's ready to share? What are the steps that need to be done to prepare themselves to be ready to either DIY it or to go to somebody like yourself and your team, Steve?
So the press, more so than ever, has their work cut out for them because they have a reduced staff and a reduced news hole. And so they really rely on good PR people or good business people to pitch them on stories that make sense to their audience. So we make sure that it's a win-win for the media, for our client, and for their audience. And the way to start is to think about what stories, what headlines can you add value to for their audience. So as an example, I was just talking to an immigration law firm about how do they position themselves as being the go-to source to solve that challenge for those who are trying to immigrate to the US or are having trouble with the logistics of that. And so we need to come up with story angles of, you know, what are the 5 things you need to think about when you are trying to get a citizenship? What are the 7 things that typically get in the way? What's the background of some of the key lawyers so that they're proving that they have a pathway to success because they have experience. So the biggest part of creating an opportunity as a media darling is to create a punch list of story ideas that you can talk about and provide a bio of why you make sense, maybe even provide some quotes that are canned that they could use in a pinch, even if they can't reach you, and maybe some industry background as to what's going on in the industry, contact information, and some high-res photos that can be used either in print or online. And then it becomes kind of a turnkey process that when we send out good press kits to the right people, typically we get phone calls back saying, how can we arrange for an interview? But we also know that because we're overloaded in general, reporters and editors are pretty good at ignoring email too. So we do a lot of telephone outreach for clients as well, because we know how to have that conversation, and we're pretty persistent about that follow-up. And so the combination of those things tend to generate coverage. So you have to start with what can I talk about that's valuable, and how can I get on that reporter's mental Rolodex or electronic Rolodex. And you want to be able to be the go-to source, meaning that you're able to talk in good short sound bites, that you're able to tell good stories that are relatable about your subject, and that you're available within the same day part that the media reaches out. There tends to be a very slim window of opportunity that if they don't reach you to talk about the immigration crisis, they're going to move on to the next law firm.
Because at the end of the day, they're trying to solve the problem of production and producing relevant material. And so what I think I'm hearing you say is that if you can get prepared, think ahead, have all those things in place, you make it easy for them. They're likely to choose you.
That's right. And the other side of this equation is, just like all marketing, it's not a single cry into space, a single message. It's really an ongoing process of reaching out to the press. So for most of our clients, we have ongoing news releases about relevant topics going to them, along with an updated press kit to prod them along, to keep our name alive, to build a portfolio that the media will keep on us, so that we continue to demonstrate to them that we should be the go-to source.
That's so interesting. So you're basically the media for the media, where you're going through their feed and saying, here, this is what's relevant. What do you want from this?
Right. So we try to become an asset for them. We're part of their brainstorming staff meeting for what good stories are out there, what's relevant in the news already, and how can we add additional comment to that from a reliable source.
So the person that is maybe a solo entrepreneur and they want to utilize these tools, they feel like they can put together this punch list of story outlines, the bio, the quotes, the industry background, the contact information, the high resolution photos, that they can prepare this information. Do they have a fighting chance trying to get that information out there, or is it really necessity that they have somebody else promoting it?
Well, no, I think that people do have a fighting chance to do that. It's a question of whether, in all things, whether you take the time to do it and to learn that industry a little bit more so that you're doing it well. So when I have my taxes done, I reach out to a CPA.
Right.
I don't want to learn that world. On the other hand, I've seen some DIY people do well if they're persistent, and they're persuasive, and they stay at it. The other challenge, though, is who do you reach out to, right? So you can do a Google search for, let's say, TV stations in the greater, Boston area, because Greater Boston TV reaches all of New England. And so, for instance, we recently had one of our clients is Murdoch Fudge, which has several locations on Martha's Vineyard. And we knew that, the media would be looking for sort of soft stories on the beginning of summer and the fun of summer, and fudge would be a nice tie-in. They make the fudge on premise and they do it in front of people. And there's great stories about Jamaican students coming to help out because there's a labor shortage on the Cape. The short of it is we got Channel 7 to do both a news story and a Made in Massachusetts story that not only had extensive airtime during the day that it was released, but now it becomes, an unlimited archive on the website, on our client's website, on YouTube. So there's some real value there. The challenge that an individual has is they don't have typically they don't have the contacts of who to reach out to, and they're not quite sure where to start. So you could do some of that yourself with Google searches. You might even have some knowledge of some of your media outlets that do make sense and match up to your expertise. But we also use an online press service called Cision that costs us $9,000 a year to get access to every media source in North America. And we're able to slice and dice that any way we need. We use podseeker.com, which gives us access to any podcast by category as well. So we help streamline and create volume of contact quickly that a DIYer would have to sort of bootstrap on their own.
That's great. I like how you've explained that also, and you've given us an idea of the real value that a firm like yours can bring to the table. As we wrap up, there's one other question that I had for you that really was what prompted us to speak in the first place. And that is, what do we do when we think we've prepared, we think we're ready, and the media goes rogue on us and they start asking questions that we weren't prepared for, or demanding information that we're not ready to share yet? How do you prep your people to respond to
I wasn't prepared for this question. No, I'm just kidding.
that?
So first I will say, most of the press nowadays, it's no longer Woodward and Bernstein looking for a controversial story. More of press today is, golly gee, isn't that wonderful? So in most cases, they try to make you feel comfortable and at ease so that you can do better in an interview. But if you do get questions, I mean, this sort of the joke in the PR industry is the question of, how often do you beat your wife? How do you answer that question? What's the right answer to that one? So,
Well, I use the rule of thumb, and so it's no bigger than a switch.
yeah, right. So what we tell people is, you're allowed to pause and reiterate the question back to the interviewer, so you're giving yourself a moment. You're able to say, I don't have an answer to that question right now, but I will get back to you with an answer. You're able to pivot to a subject that is appropriate about, we as a community feel that family is important, and that all our family members, we feel their safety and their value are of our greatest concern. So a lot of media training is about bridging to subjects that you want to talk about. One of the great learning areas is to listen to most politicians in an interview. They rarely answer the question that they're asked. They move to the program that they want to emphasize. They want to talk about the topics that they know will resonate with their base, as opposed to the attack that the journalist might be on. So you certainly never want to get into an argument with a journalist, or as the story used to go, you never want to pick a battle with someone who buys their ink by the barrel. So you want to find ways to diffuse that and deflect that and to move to more comfortable ground.
And what I'm hearing is that you coach your people on that, your clients, to make sure that they are prepared to bridge to a subject that they feel comfortable speaking on.
That's right. So most of the time we will coach them in general of how to do better with the press. One of the things is to never, ever, even in a print press conversation, talk about something that's off the record, because the reporters can never remember conveniently what was on and off the record. And whatever you said off the record is always juicier than what was on. We do some video training sometimes with people as well, so they know what they look like on camera. And we prepare them, their dress and their demeanor, to be successful on camera. So, right. And each reporter has their own sort of personal agenda and their own style, and we try to prepare clients for that.
This has been a really fun conversation. Thank you. And I feel I've received a lot of value out of it. And I have a page of notes to prove it, that I'm looking forward to uncovering some of these topics even deeper inside of our mastermind. Well, Steve, we're so pleased to have had you here today. We thank you for attending. Is there any last thought that you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I think I just came out of a meeting prior to this with one of my clients that is one of the larger developers of solar systems in Massachusetts. And we've been getting a lot of press. We've been getting a lot of inquiries and visibility. And his concern was, what's the difference between direct response marketing versus indirect?
Oh, interesting.
And they both have value. And so we look at direct response as well beyond the scope of traditional press. We use artificial intelligence to identify specific audiences and do email drip campaigns to them and many other things.
Hmm.
But we also, I had to impress upon them that indirect marketing is what positions you for the brand awareness and the credibility awareness to generate long-term business.
All right, say that one more time. Indirect marketing.
So indirect marketing is what is a more long-term effort to generate the positioning of credibility and viability in the mind of the consumer.
Okay.
So we know now that in this region, when people think of solar, and if they even do a search on solar through Google, they're going to come across our news placements. And those news placements mean that our client is credible, viable, and should be at the top of their list for outreach.
Oh, interesting. Well, thank you. That was extremely timely nuggets, and I'm sure that it was well appreciated. Well, Steve, we thank you again for being here, and we look forward to the mastermind that we're about to embark on. If you're listening to this and you'd like to either be a guest on Evolution Business Development as an interview or attend, we welcome you to do that. Thank you.
My pleasure.